All right, we're just getting on YouTube and getting ready for our talk here in a moment. Perfect. All right. So if you're joining us on YouTube, I'll be looking at your questions there too. All right, welcome to our community call January of 2020 already. My goodness. I think we've been waiting for this year for so long, it's hard to imagine it's already here. So let's talk about what is going on in the world at the moment. It seems like it's wild and crazy. So I think it is. It is. Good morning to everyone. An afternoon and evening, of course. Yeah, so while we're connecting here just at this beginning of 2020, let's kind of start out with just being together as humans at the moment, right? Men and women, children and adults, all the vulnerable, all of the powerful, and everybody in between. Here we have the collective, and we're tapping into them today. And so, what I was asking Gaia and the collective and Source God, what do you need from us today? Because this is a time where we can be in selfless service at the moment. And if you are awake enough right now, if you're here, even listening to this, it's a chance for you to give back as always, as you do so well. To give back today, we're going to do 2 pillars of light. Normally we do 1. And so we're going to do 2 today. And I think you'll be pleased at what I've picked for us because the collective is asking for help. So here we have a lot going on in Africa, a lot going on all over the world when it comes to plagues. Plagues are here now. They're here. They've been here, of course. We have had plagues before, many millennia of plagues. In this case, we have one of the worst plagues of locusts in Africa in 70 years. So that's very important. It's showing us what Gaia is requiring from us. She says, look, culture cannot happen without food. Culture cannot happen without food. Connections, human development, human advancement. None of these things can happen without food. And Gaia has sent her children, the locusts, and they are destroying immense amount of food in Africa. One of the pillars of light we will build is one for the people of Africa in the Rift Valley, where humankind, one of our very first sets of ancestors, was there in the Rift Valley. So it's very interesting. She has pinpointed a very precise cradle of human culture and civilization. It's one of the main places where the Homo sapien developed into modern human beings, right? And none of this is without meaning. You often hear me say things like, well, everything has meaning and nothing has meaning. It just depends on how much meaning you want to put to it, which is true. In this case, if we were going to say this has really deep meaning and the earth is trying to tell us something, she's saying, go back to your roots. Go back to what is it going to take for humans to live in harmony with the planet, egalitarianism, food distribution. We waste more food now than we ever have in human history. That really says a lot about our cultures. And so food is the key to all civilization. When you have a culture that has surplus food, you have more art, you have more technology, you have more development, you have more awareness. You have people able to spend more time on philosophical, spiritual, emotional, and mental endeavors than spending time on trying to survive. And this is a straight, nice, clear anthropological fact that the targeting of our food is so massive. Now, when you look at that targeting, what's going on right now with who's been in charge of the food on the planet? One of the biggest companies in the world starts with an M. I don't want to say it on YouTube because I might get censored. Censorship is real. But you know who I'm talking about. So here we have this massive company. It's crumbling. It's crumbling. People are standing up finally and saying, you can't keep paying scientists to fake out all of these different studies saying that this stuff is safe. And if you study very closely the history of that particular company, and you look at what happened in India when that company went in with their green revolution, quote unquote, and it wasn't green, it was a revolution. It was a revolution to take seed ownership away from the people, to take the ownership of food, of the propagation of food away from the people. What happened to India early on with all of this? Their soil was totally destroyed. Their water tables were destroyed. People began to starve to death. The crops began to fail. Many, many, many farmers have killed themselves over the past few decades. Now, we don't have to watch that happen. And I want to give props to the farmers in the United States who are getting real about this. They're sick and tired of how much control these companies really have over them. And they're leaning towards community-based efforts to redistribute the food they grow to people who really want to buy it. In particular, there's some groups in the Chicago, Illinois area, some farmers who are very, very extraordinary. They've gone from classic, modern farming to completely going entirely organic, and then having intimate relationships with chefs and families all over the Chicago area where they have direct ability to distribute the healthy food that they're growing to people who will be cooking it and serving it. And this is what the community-based local orientation of food distribution looks like. Now, what's happened in Africa is pushing us to need to have both. And we're going to talk about two waves of consciousness right now that are tied together. So we need both global support and distribution and ending the waste of any kind of food, as well as local. So it's got to be both. The revolution at both ends. It's global and it's also local. It starts with you. It starts with you doing the best you can to vote with your money. You know, at one point, a few months ago, we were talking about the Amazon burning and the rainforests being destroyed, mainly by things like crops that are feeding an industry that's very unhealthy, palm oil. And when you end your consumption of palm oil, you're voting for the Amazon or the rainforests in Indonesia to be more important than a specific cheap oil for peanut butter, you know, that the orangutan is more important than having your favorite brand of Jif or whatever on your shelf. Okay, that's what we're doing here. And the African people themselves have had a longer than anybody, intimate relationship with the land. They've gone through this before, and it's been devastating. And that means that we've got to put on our hats and think about what's it going to take as the average person to help these folks. I might not be able to send a bunch of money to help or send a whole bunch of food to help, but I can be doing spiritual work. And this is the part that is so important for all of you people who are harmonizers out there. A lot of you are the kind of person who, when you walk into a room, you're like, whoa, I see that picture is wonky on the wall, right? But also energetically, whoa, there's some wonky energy here. And harmonizers are constantly asking themselves, well, what can I do about it? What can I say about it? How can I bring more harmony? It drives them crazy when they feel like they can't do or say anything. And sometimes you can't. There's very little that I could do personally or say to go help the people of Africa or China at the moment. But my goodness, the spiritual work, the spiritual part, that's where incredible amounts of effort and work can make amazing changes. We know this is true. This is quantum physics. So we're getting into that today by building 2 pillars of light, one for the Rift Valley and one for China. We need that beautiful pillar of light helping the people of China cope with a genetically engineered virus whose patent was already created back in 2015. This virus was already in existence. It was made in a lab. This is a fact. Now, the fact that it's now out in the population right at the beginning of 2020, it's not terribly surprising if you understand the dynamics going on and the big power plays that are unfolding. But that's the 2 waves I'm talking about, 2 waves of consciousness. Now, we've been through a lot of sorting as a species energetically. We've been sorted. Every time the earth makes a new energetic move or makes a new embracing embodiment of some new higher level of consciousness or frequency, human beings are taken along for the ride. And 2 things always happen when this happens. First, we'll have a big, massive shakeup where all the crap in your life gets put up to the surface. Honestly, this past solstice was no different. And so we'll talk about that, and we'll recap a little bit about solstice too and how it's relevant currently. And so, here we are. We need to be looking at what the spiritual efforts we can do are. And this is very key. I want to sidetrack real fast here because we have a very good comment that came through from Caroline. And she says, Dear Elizabeth, I live in Belize, and a group of First Nations people visited farmers here to create a policy on seed saving among the indigenous people on the planet to protect their traditional seeds. I was very inspired when I met some of these people. There were Navajo and Hopi and Apache, Mohawk, who are determined to protect their food sources. Indeed, and one of the biggest allies for food sovereignty and seed sovereignty, which will save the human race. Seriously, if we have that in place, we will be okay, is Vandana Shiva. Dr. Vandana Shiva, one of my favorite people on the planet, one of my heroes. She herself really stood in front of company with a big M that was trying to take over all the seeds, right? She stood with the women of India and the farmers and said no. And they also have a good seed saving and sharing program. This is what revolution looks like. This is personal initiative and, of course, community-oriented thinking. It's what the globe needs. And so what can you do? You can save your seeds, the ones from the plants that are not terminator seeds. You can keep planting native plants. For example, in my yard, I actually grow a native North American plant called the American groundnut. It's a wonderful, wonderful food. Seriously, incredible food. Totally couldn't get tired of it. And tastes kind of like a mixture of nuts and potatoes and sweet potatoes. And they're a really neat plant. And you can eat the flowers and the seed pods and the little roots. So a beautiful prepper food that grows very powerfully in all of North America. And I got my hands on it and said, this is what I want to cultivate. I want it to be here for millennia. So it's taken over my garden and I'm quite happy for it. That's a good example. That will be there forever and people can take the roots and grow them elsewhere. And that's a plant that's native. It's not going to, it's a almost nearly perfect prepper food. And if you've been following me at all, you know that I'm totally into prepping and just preparedness in general. So this is the kind of ideas, like, what does it look like physically? Plant an American groundnut in your yard. See what happens, you know, let it take over a little bit. Then you'll always have that food there. It's amazing how culture can truly change and also get back to being powerful again when food becomes so vitally important to us again. And that is the basis of our bodies. It's the basis of cultures, the body and how it interacts with the world. And when your body's not healthy because it doesn't have good food, then you can't be on a spiritual path very well, right? So then let's go back to the subject of this bigger picture, these two waves, right? So we have these two waves of consciousness that are so important. Every time the earth, again, jumps into another position in space, literally, she's a very conscious being. So she's taking us along for the ride. And when she goes higher, we do too. And if we resist that, a lot of people will resist it because of trauma, because of all the genetic trauma and memories of their embodiment. We're here doing a lot of cleanup work, 500,000 years worth of trauma cleanup, which has shut our embodiments down so much that we don't live nearly as long as the human body is capable of. Parrots live longer than human beings do at this point. And in all ancient texts, I mean, go look for yourself. The very beginnings of the Bible, the Old Testament, the ancient Sanskrit texts, other texts from all over the world, all describe the original humans being able to live for 1,000 years, not longer, 1,000 years. We're like 1/10 of that if we're lucky. And that's proof of how not only we've been manipulated through trauma and oppression and how that's turned into these shortened, painful lives in these bodies that are racked with pain, trauma, and genetic disorders, among other things, and disease. But then we also have to deal with the current cultures that we're disassembling. Everybody who showed up at this time is amazing. All of you are important. The book was not written along the way. The book of the universe was written at the beginning, and all of you are included in that story. And without you, and without all the people, that book is not complete. The book of the universe is a real ocean of time and space, an ocean of discovery. And you're an intimate part of that. The interactions you have, the relationships you have, you're here to discover what is love and feed that back to source. But you're also here to discover what is not love and to go deep into that anyway and find love nonetheless. That's mysticism, going into the shadow, that whatever shows up in front of you, going into the shadow to find the light. Some of the most powerful light that there is available is deep within the shadow if you're willing. If you're willing to practice unconditional love and universal compassion, you're going to find incredible power and light in you facing your fears, dealing with this trauma. That's why you're here. And these two waves of consciousness that keep separating from each other along the way. The one wave is those who haven't been able to manage getting past the resistance of the higher frequencies, or whatever you'd like to call it, higher consciousness. So they resist it and they get sick. Their bodies check out because they can't handle it. They're not able to deal with all that density, all the trash bags of trauma built up in the system, right? And then there's the people who are aware of it, who are aware of the situation, aware of what needs to be done. You got to clean up all the trauma. You got to clean up the mess that's been left behind. That will help often elongate our lives. The body changes a lot when you bring in more light. And I just taught a little class about this just recently. It's still available on the website under offerings. It's called Gaining and Maintaining Spiritual Power. Power is light and light is power. How do you gain more power? How do you bring in more light? And how do you maintain it? How do you maintain it so that it's not getting replaced with more junk again and more trauma? This is so vitally important. This is the journey of consciousness. So the two waves, one wave is peaking right now. It's coming up into high consciousness. Anybody who's aware of it, who's trying to ride that wave, all of you are, we're doing the best we can. About every possible pattern that's followed you around, every polarity, every difficulty, every challenge is now very clear at the surface. Lee Harris earlier, I think in the month, pointed out, he called it blinding clarity, and others like Richard Rudd have been seeing it too, and myself as well. Blinding clarity, the light is getting so bright that you can't deny all the flaws, the challenges, the pain, the stuff anymore. It's all there, it's so clear, and yet incredibly overwhelming, isn't it? Really overwhelming. And that's how it feels to go up on that wave. It feels really overwhelming. You feel out of control. You feel out of control, like, wow, I don't even have anything to hang on to. We're going up so high. I feel like I might crash really hard if this comes down. And so we got to keep it up. We got to keep maintaining our consciousness in the moment. How do we do that? Just staying in the moment. Notice when you're worrying about the future or the past, you're leaking energy. You're losing energy and light when you're worrying about that stuff. Bring yourself back to the moment the best you can. Bow to your brain mind. Say, brain mind, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you trying to help me. You're trying to help me. I get it. But I really need to be in the now where all the action is so that I can be empowered to maintain the timeline I want, not worrying about whether it's going to unfold. You can't do anything in the future or the past. This is why mindfulness and being in the present is so important right now for anybody trying to ride that wave. But we have another wave. It's going the opposite direction this time. It's very powerful. It's pulling on the people who are trying to ride this wave of consciousness that's going up. This other wave is very dense. It's going down. It's pulling a lot of energy from the people who are trying to go up. You are starting to get the sensation, the feeling that I'm trying to portray here. We've got a lot of dense consciousness. This is including, all of the different playing grounds of good and evil and dark and light, and including all of the people in resistance to consciousness and the people who are saying too little too late, the people who are saying, I'm not going to really share this. I don't want to be involved. Apathy, very dense stuff. It's pulling on the consciousness. People who are not willing to look at the trauma that they have, that they're projecting on other people. People who are not willing to go in and do the inner work and take responsibility for every situation that they're in. And even the most traumatic, awful ones, being able to say, you know what? I'm done. I don't want to be drugged down anymore. And this is the attitude that's very challenging for those of us who are healers, who care about the people. All of you do. You care so much. You're empaths, a lot of you. You can feel it. You can feel the suffering and the density. It's maddening to imagine that so many people are so apathetic and so traumatized, and that they're so incapable or ignorant or just simply unable to move forward, to be able to try to get better, to do the inner work that it takes to get to these higher states. It takes a lot of work. Why? The human body house is full of trash, 500,000 years of trash. No wonder we enter into these bodies and don't even remember who we are. How can you when you're literally surrounded in trash bags of trauma? So when people do figure this out, sometimes much later in life, they start moving the trash bags of trauma and things start to feel better, yeah, and they get more access. They find out that the house is very big and includes all the dimensions. They start to clean out the trash bags, right? This takes time, it takes effort, and it's tiring. You can't imagine how many people, when I do sessions with them, they say, I have to do more work. I have to do more, like, this sucks. I've been doing 50 years of work. That's the problem. People believe that there's going to be an end to this work. Drop that. Drop that entirely. It's not serving you. It's not serving you to believe that there's going to be an end to the work. Even in enlightenment, you don't stop. You don't stop dealing with the pain. You don't stop dealing with the trauma, even in enlightenment. And so that is an old negative program that slows us down. Oh, I'm so tired of doing the work. Can't we be done? I don't want to process anymore. I'm tired of the trauma. Can't we be done? This is what leads to apathy. It leads to exhaustion. It leads to people bypassing, right? Because they're like, you know what, man, I'm real tired of this whole layers of shadow and darkness stuff. I really just want to go and be comfortable in love and light. I'm going to ignore everything that's going on. This is what happens to people. Fair enough. Fair enough. This is not easy work to do. No, it's not. It never was. Certainly wasn't easy to get started even, let alone be told that, hey, this is going to be upkeep too for the rest of your existence here. Wow, that's hard. But if we can release ourselves from the attachment to the work being done when it's not, even when you're done with your own stuff, you end up having 500,000 years of ancestor stuff to deal with. That's how big the house is. The body and the DNA being the house, right? And my dad at one point, he said, I've healed all my trauma. And I started laughing. And I said, good, I'm glad to hear that. Now you have a responsibility to start working on all of your ancestors' trauma. And he was really confused about it. He's like, why would I do that? Well, because that's the next step. That's the next level of job, is to clean up the archaeological site that is the human DNA, and to maintain and gain as much light in that embodiment as possible, to the point that all that light begins to encourage and support and nurture and cultivate the efforts of all the people around you, past, present, and future, to be enlightened beings too. That's why the job doesn't stop. It's because of that. And of course, as humans, we consistently end up coming across traumas and things like that we must manage. And even in enlightenment, you do. You still end up finding pain and more chunks of whatever show up, more reactions, more triggers, but then you know what to do with it. It's upkeep at that point. Then you're not letting it turn into trauma in your embodiment. You're staying focused on what it's going to take in that moment. And the more you do this, the easier it gets, the more powerful your conscious thought about, what do I do right now when this horrifying thing is happening to me? What do I do? And that's mysticism. It's being able to know, all right, I got to merge with it. I got to find it in my body and how uncomfortable it is. I got to welcome it there. I got to keep going forward into this until I find the light inside of it. And that's the key. That's the key to longevity. It's the key to getting our species back up to par so that we can survive on this planet before she kicks us off. Because she will eventually. She's going to say, look, y'all, I gave you 500,000+ years to figure this out. And I've given you every opportunity to ride with me on this wave of higher consciousness, to be one with the universe and be able to have access to all the light available in that mindset. But you weren't able to take it. That's not what we want to hear. That is not the timeline that we want to keep cultivating in the moment for ourselves. So this is so key. Now, part of it's going to be one of the very hardest things we've all ever faced. Not the plagues, but letting go. Letting go of the wave that is going down into density, the wave that continues to propagate chaos. By letting go of it with unconditional love, letting go of our savior complex. All of us have it. All of us have it. All of us want to help somebody. All of us do. We see something or someone or some cause that really pings us. It opens our heart. Can we be willing to unattach ourselves and say, look, I'm going to do everything in my lifetime possible to nurture and cultivate, to maintain light in myself and the people around me. I'm going to do everything possible, every single moment in my consciousness, to walk the timeline where all of us get to reach that golden era, an era where technology and peace and universal consciousness reign, where we'll be able to re-access our ability to be ancient beings again, where our ancestors will benefit so much so, biologically so, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, culturally, from our work now, just as all the men and women before me have, like you, many of you, have carved the way. You carved the way through your inner work for me to be here and turn right around and help you out and do this work without persecution. You did that for me, and we can do it together for the rest of the future. But we have to let go. We've got to unattach ourselves from the difficult, challenging journeys that many of our fellow souls have picked in order to advance. They didn't pick these traumas and challenges to suffer. They picked them to advance. We cannot deny them that journey. If that journey takes them down and out, they still will have learned an immense amount about love, about reality, in order to be a more advanced soul. And many of those souls, they'll check out of these bodies and they'll come back. And they'll come back and they'll say, I know what the problems are. I remember what the problems are. Many, many, many people are remembering much, much more, especially if you're working on your trauma, you will remember more. I attest to this. I remember so much more about who I am as a soul now than ever before, and I'm remembering more every day because I keep working on the trauma part, because I keep cleaning up the DNA, because I keep bringing in more light, because I don't give up, I don't stop, ever. And with that, I've gained more memory. I can remember the lifetimes where I was dealing with the darkest of the dark and the most evil of the evil kind of stuff on this planet, where I was traumatized, where I died even more traumatized than I'd started. But I learned so much from that lifetime, and now coming back into this embodiment and saying, I know what we face now. I can be a better teacher now because I'm willing to look at that and merge with it and understand it not run away from that. So, if this was me in one of my last lifetimes, then I would be the one going down and out, checking out, whatever, dragging consciousness down. But I didn't pick that timing. I picked the timing to be here now in the best possible position I could to support the healing of all that shadow, to support the healing of that darkness. And that may also be exactly what will happen to many of the people we have the most trouble with on this planet. The folks that on one end are just simply didn't have the privilege like we have had to have spiritual wisdom put on their plate. And on the other end, people who are very willingly and very knowledgeable people at that, incredibly privileged people choosing to go deeper and deeper into the desire for power over people, right? So we have quite the spectrum of energetics in this second wave underneath that's pulling a lot of this consciousness down. Now they're intimately connected because these are our family members, these are our friends, these are the other set of people on the planet, and they are pulling on each other. Right now they're equal. Right now they're equal. That's why I'm even bringing this up, because this push and pull in consciousness happens all the time. But now they're really equal. We have a chance right this moment to be able to say, nope, I'm not going to let that wave of higher consciousness get pulled under. I won't. In me, how can I allow for the journeys of the people around me to unfold? How can I also be supportive of them, whatever their choices are? How can I support my own continued advancement? Sometimes that looks like you ending up losing friends, my friends. We lose friends. We lose connections because those folks, they get overwhelmed by the level of light that comes through our words, our deeds, our actions, our bodies. That light gets so bright, and sometimes it really shatters people. It makes them feel a lot of different awful things, and then they see all their flaws and they say, you know what, this makes me so uncomfortable, I can't even be around her anymore. This has happened to me many times. It happens to all of us. When we keep moving forward, it's as long as we're in unconditional love and we say, I bow to you, thank you for what period of time we could be connected. I'm so grateful. And just being grateful for that, but not being attached. That's so hard to do. It's one of the number one aspects of ego is attachment, isn't it? And then what are we going to do about it? We bow to it. Thank you so much for this learning from this attachment. Thank you so much for this learning around this judgment, this expectation that I keep having, this clinging on to something of substance and structure that I want to stay the same. And that is us chipping away at ego, at density. It's us unattaching ourselves from the waves that crash and making sure that we ride the waves of higher consciousness. And energetically, this sorting, this separation of two kinds of consciousness, this has been foretold for ages and ages. A lot of different teachers have kind of misconstrued it a little bit to be a dimensional thing where they're saying, oh, well, certain people are going to leave the third and fourth dimension or whatever and go to the fifth dimension, and then everybody else is going to get left behind. That's not what I'm saying, because the dimensions have always been accessible to anyone who's willing to do that work. What I'm saying is that some of the trauma and the pain and the drama and the challenges feel extremely overwhelming. Some of the apathy, some of the darkness, some of the density, some of the evil is so dense, so heavy that certain people are not able to handle it or manage it because that's the soul's journey and they're learning about it. We don't know what's going to happen at the moment they decide to check out. I have seen people completely heal every single ounce of their trauma in their embodiment and merge with all polarities on their deathbed. It is amazing what human consciousness is capable of. We never give up on anyone, but what we say is, how am I being the victim or the tyrant? How am I trying to save everybody? How am I judging? How am I expecting? How am I attached to outcomes that I shouldn't necessarily be attached to? How am I leaking energy into the future or the past? When a trauma happens or a trigger or a reaction happens, we say, how did I create that? And how am I also pulling out whatever's going on from the people, places, and things around me to discover this challenge or this fear? Again, this is mysticism. And this mindset is those people who are trying to ride that wave of higher consciousness, those that have given up, that are saying no, that just want to be comfortable, that just don't want to do the work. It's too hard, it's too much. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. For so long, I've been trying so hard to imagine all of us trying to pull all that density up and out, that somehow we're going to save every single one of the people on this planet and bring them all into higher consciousness. That's crazy. That's crazy. I was totally brainwashed into thinking that kind of mindset early on with this hope of saving the world. And it's arrogance. It's arrogance. And underneath that is a lot of worthlessness. And that's the next topic I want to mention to you, is that, look, there is worthlessness underneath any amount of hubris we've ever had. There's worthlessness there. Dig into it. In the embodiment, the men often will hold that deep worthlessness in their heart space. And that worthlessness hurts so much that they create a big set of armor around their heart space and try to separate themselves from anything that might take their energy, because they've been taught that there's a limited amount of love in the world and that they only have so much love, that they only have so much access to that love. And they hide that worthlessness deep under all of that protection. And in the feminine body, we often will hide all that worthlessness under anger, deep in our gut and our root, our power center in the feminine body. Underneath all that anger and all of that depression and all that separation is worthlessness. And underneath that is desire. Now, I've been going through this process myself where I was looking at my anger for the first time, because it's the one emotion that I avoid at all costs, is anger. And when I get angry, it's totally scary because it comes out of nowhere, like somebody just popped the top off of it. And it's scary to me, so I avoid it as much as I can. But underneath all that anger, when I was looking at it and discovering it over the past month, I found all this worthlessness. I found loneliness. You'd think that I wouldn't be a very lonely person with how many people I am connected to and work with, but I am. It's very lonely. I don't really get to meet a lot of people in person, which is going to change this year, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a moment. But that's really key for me. Is I'm an anthropologist. I'm social. I want to be around people. I don't care how traumatized they are or what position they're in. It doesn't matter who you are. I want to be around you. I want to know you. I want to discover, what is your soul? What does your soul really want from this journey? It's the only thing I've ever been interested in. And it drives me. It drives me. And to be alone out in the middle of Kentucky, all alone with my little family, yes, but very lonely, not really being able to interact with people, underneath that loneliness was all that worthlessness and desire. I found desire. This desire was so overwhelming. It felt not bad, but it felt really uncomfortable. And so I called my teacher. Everybody needs a teacher. We really do. None of us are going to get far very quickly if we don't reach out and try to find good teachers along the way. And I hope I'll always be able to be taught by the people I work with and vice versa. But my particular teacher, Lucia Renee, I asked her about this. I said, I found all this desire and it's really confusing me because I've never looked at it before. And she said, desire, Elizabeth, desire is simply that you feel separate from something you want to be one with. That's all. I desire for humanity to make it. I desire for humanity to love each other. I desire for human beings to stand at the galactic table where they belong and end the oppression and subjugation from other beings in this galaxy and in other dimensions. I desire this with my whole heart and my whole body. I'm separating myself from all of those outcomes by this desire. So I welcome the desire. I merge with it. I merge with the desire. I find it in my body, in my root, in my heart, my solar plexus, my gut, my throat. It's a full body desire I have. And yet I'm separating myself. That's what's going on. I'm separate from the outcome. I'm separate from the people. I'm separate from all that consciousness. That's why I'm desiring and I'm craving it. I want to be one with it. I want to merge with it. So how do we do that? It's very straightforward. You find the energy, the frequency, the emotion, whether it be the negative thing you're trying to make it stop having power over you, or the positive thing, like the desire for the heightening of human consciousness, the desire for human healing. Those are positive desires, yet they're still based in separation. I'm not separate from you. You are me and I am you. That's the truth. It doesn't feel like that, but that's why we're here, is because we need to understand this. And this leads me to polarities. I've heard many different concepts around polarities. People want to run away from polarities. They'd really like polarities to end. Thank you very much. They'd be really happy if duality would just stop. They are frustrated with the dynamics of polarities and duality in this universe. And the hope that they can reach higher consciousness where polarities will disappear is often what people will strive for very consciously in this kind of work. And I would like to give you a different perspective. Polarities are part of this universe. The first 7 dimensions of the universe include polarities. Polarities are here for learning, and they're here because of the purpose of the universe. The purpose of the universe is that source asks the very important question, what is love? And in that also discovered what is not love. And by going into the what is not love, we often will find more love there too. It's love all the way around. No matter how dark it is, you'll still find love down deep in that darkness. You will. But that's the thing. You have to be willing. You got to go into the darkness to find love. Can love overcome power over? Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Can love overcome trauma and oppression? Oh, yes. Can love overcome SRA? Can love overcome complete and total of the human race over 500,000 years? Yes. Yes, indeed, is the answer. And so we can't leave polarities and duality behind. It's okay to have a non-dualistic vantage point. But the thing is every single challenge in your life is a polarity. And that polarity is wanting to be brought home in oneness in you. To find the middle way out of the polarity is unique to each person, which gives source exactly what it wants. The answers. What does it look like when Elizabeth merges with something really dark and horrible, ends its power over her, and finds love there? What does it look like when someone gets really sick? Maybe from this new, designer virus. What does that look like when they finally are at peace? They bring the polarity of sickness versus health home in themselves. They shift all the trauma and challenges and drama about the polarity by merging with it, by finding it in their body, finding the emotion in the body. Find the emotion in the body, welcome it there over and over and over again. That is merging. You'll find that it dissolves, it unravels, it gives you light. That's the challenge we have at the moment, is not to run away from or deny the power of polarities, but to use them as stepping stones into states of consciousness where polarities don't exist, but we don't leave all the rest of the other dimensions behind. We merge with all of them. The house becomes clearer. Yes, I see, I have 12 dimensions I have access to, not just a few. We don't leave the 3D behind. We bring it all home together in oneness in ourselves. That's the key. And how do you do it? You face the fear. You face the challenge. You face the shadow. You face the dark. You face the attachment. You face the reality that not everybody's going to take that road. And that you're going to be surrounded in a lot of people who won't. And that we'll love them unconditionally nonetheless. And we'll be there for them to just do as much as we can to end the distortion of our trauma and our ego and allow that light to truly affect people the best that we can, even if it scares them. It scares people sometimes when they're around someone so light and bright as you. And yet, that's exactly what they needed in the moment to face their fear, that maybe they're not as light and bright as they thought. And if they're willing to face that, they just brought something home in themselves. That fear lost its polarity power over the person. They merge with it and it doesn't come back in the exact same way. That's the learning that Source gets to do through you. That's why your vantage point in your life are so vitally important to this journey. So I want to make sure I've covered everything. And good. So talking about getting together in person, doing 2 retreats the first half of this year. One at the beginning of May. It's a 3-day business intensive. So if any of you are interested in honing your vision, you're maybe in transition as a family or as a business or as an entrepreneur, maybe your team is in transition. Maybe you're looking for a whole other vantage point from here on out for whatever efforts you're doing in the world. My friend Susan Mills, who's a strategic business teacher, she's incredible. She's seriously changed my personal life and the way that I've worked in my business now at this point. Massive amounts of change have happened with very, very simple and straightforward, incredible work that she's done for me. And so I want to share it with you because she and I are getting together. I'm going to teach everybody about discernment and negotiation, team building, team culture, business culture, helping you with your vision. And so is Susan. She's incredible at strategy, at risk, at position, at understanding what your brand really is, or what it is that you're trying to do for a new brand or new vision. And this could go for anyone in transition. So it's about your life or your business. Either way, we're doing a 3-day intensive in Houston at the beginning of May 1, 2, and 3. And we're setting it all up. But if you'd like to join us, we're trying to keep the price really low so that you can come. And only a certain amount of people are going to be welcome to be able to sign up. So if you're interested to join me at the beginning of May here in Texas, Houston, Texas, I'd love for you to come. Come look at what we're offering. It's at businessvisionintensive.com. And the second thing I'm doing is just me, but we're going to go to Vilcabamba, Ecuador, June 2020, from June 19th to the 26th. We're going to spend the summer solstice together in paradise. The last retreat I did in June was so powerful. Half men and half women came. We had massive breakthroughs for everyone. Every person said it was the best retreat they'd ever been to. And we're going to do something very similar, but this time in the heart of the most diverse place in the entire world, Ecuador. Vilcabamba is the valley of longevity and manifestation. There's a massive vortex there. 4 rivers meet there. And then Mondango, the mountain, also a massive vortex, is right there in front of where we'll be staying at Madre Tierra Resorts. And I'm so very excited to do this special retreat. My teacher, Lucia, has done her retreats there at the exact same place. And it's one of my favorite places in the whole world. If you want to join me, I'd love for you to. Also trying to keep it, the price good, decent, enough time for you to be able to plan these things. And so if you'd like to look at that and what I'm offering for that retreat, go to seerandscientist.com/retreats. And both of those are up and available. I've got an application for the June retreat. You don't need to apply for the business one. That intensive is going to be really intense, but we're going to get more work done in those 3 days than most people get it done in 3 months or even 3 years sometimes. And of course, in June, we're honing in, we're using both the vortex and the waves of incredible power from the solstice to make massive personal, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual breakthroughs for you. And I'm here for you as your personal oracle and seer. And that group is certainly going to be able to ride higher waves of consciousness and shift whatever is needed. It's going to be a processing retreat, but we're going to do a lot of deep seeing and learning about ourselves and be able to get some answers and some clarity about exactly the right next step for you. So finally, I'm ending this whole I'm all alone living in Kentucky thing. And let's hang out. Let's get together in May and or June. You're welcome to come to both. Be totally fun to have you. Either way, I hope you'll look at it if it pings your interest. And I'll make sure and send those links out to you very soon as well. In the meantime, both of those sites are up for you to look at. Good. So let's look at questions. What's coming up for you? How's things going? Did what I talk about just now resonate with you? What problems have you been facing? Now, I can't do any personal readings on our community calls, but I can do general questions. So if you can frame your ideas in a general way, let's go for that. I'm going to look at the Q&A board. I'm going to look at the chat on Zoom, and I'm going to look at the chat on YouTube. So I've got 3 places that I usually look. So I'm going to start with my chat here on Zoom, and we're just taking a look, see what's going on. Gigi, I am talking to you. Gigi says, I feel like you're talking to me. Susan, SRA is satanic ritual abuse, something I was just kind of slightly trying to get away from saying on the YouTube, but that's okay. They censor people when they say this kind of stuff. And that's how it goes. All right, so moving up through. Oh, there's another lady, a grandmother, Florida Mayo, has a seed bank. Oh, look her up too. Kathy says that. Yeah, and so Joe says, I love that you're talking about the 1,000-year lifespan. We can do that if we heal the trauma. We can. And it's not going to be that, say, like, I'm going to live for 1,000 years, but the work that I do on my trauma, it resonates out. It creates an energetic blueprint. It's very quantum physics level stuff here. When you change yourself, that light from your consciousness, which comes straight from source, it moves through and it actually creates a blueprint, right? It's sort of like a window and all that light shining through. If there's trauma and negative programming and all this junk in the way, well, that light gets really distorted, right? But in this case, we're working on that. And when we work on it enough, that light begins to be more pure, and that blueprint of longevity and health and all of the different kind of work you've done on yourself, it actually goes out and it reflects out to all of the other people you're connected with, to the planet, to the collective. It keeps going. It doesn't just stop. Light gets far. Light can't be beat. It's going to penetrate everything. Light is consciousness. So the more heightened consciousness you have, the more light you have shining through, and that blueprint of what to do and how to do it, it gets out there to the rest of the people who might not have had the privilege to have access to it. The more we do this work, the more psychically we begin to connect our energetic spheres with each other, which turns into eventually the real internet. The real internet has nothing to do with computers. It already exists. It's the internet of consciousness. And this one is something we've all tapped into. All of us are capable of tapping into that real internet. Remember when your friend said, hey, I'm thinking about you or whatever, and you said, I was just thinking about you too, right at the exact same time. You don't need dial-up. You've got your psychic abilities. Beautiful. So Mokshamana asks, what can we do to balance the masculine and feminine energies? Good question. Coming into solstice, we saw the rise of divine feminine power. This wave of energy came through and the earth embodied it. A year or two before that, she embodied the rise of divine masculine healing and power. And that was full of mercy. And now we have a different kind of power, a divine feminine power, one that includes destruction, one that includes the crumbling of systems that have held the masculine and feminine separate for so long, right? So us as feminine embodiment at this time right now, and you might identify in some way, shape, or form on a spectrum there. Either way, all of us have both, right? We've had soul lifetimes where we were both. And many of us tend to hang out a little bit towards the middle of having a lot of masculine, a lot of feminine or whatever. For me, I'm kind of smack in the middle, honestly. And energetically, I noticed that my divine feminine power wants to absorb and hold and hug and nurture and help to heal divine masculine right now. And I've said this before in other talks, so I encourage you to look backwards in some of the monthly talks we've done. It's in my YouTube under the playlist community, circle community calls. And I talk about this specifically over the past few months, how the men need to be seen, they need to be heard, they need to be healed and loved just how they are at this moment, and that many of those men, that's all they would have needed from us at this time. That's all they need from us right now to be motivated to end any kind of toxic programming around the masculine. They just need to be unconditionally loved. And this balance between us, men and women, it's going to be us embracing one another in unconditional love that will get us somewhere, like two giant doors that must open simultaneously. We have to work together. And we need the men. We do. We need them so bad. And we need these powerful women. All of you have both the balance within you. It's possible to have unconditional love for the divine masculine and feminine in all of its representations will be the first step. And then, of course, to ask ourselves, how can I support whomever's in front of me, man or woman, in their journey into higher consciousness? So this is going to be a continued effort. It's probably the number one most important healing subject on the table at the moment, is making sure we can all do this properly. This is why I really like having both men and women at any of the events I do. I just got done teaching in Seattle. Again, half men, half women showed up. It was really awesome. It's proof that this kind of thinking, this scientific spiritual mindset really is pinging the guys. And you know, normally these kinds of events you'll have mainly women, and that's not the case anymore. The men are tired of sitting back and doing nothing. They really want to heal. They really want change. So that's there. It's there. People are showing up. It's very physically obvious. But gosh, you know, we could keep on talking about that subject for ages. Thank you for bringing it up, my friend. Kathy's wondering about any links around the virus that was formed in the lab and unleashed. And I don't have any. And the limited amount of research I've done on it, the patent is available to see for yourself. And that's all I had to look at to know, well, this is a designer virus. So you can actually go research that particular patent yourself. It's available. And that's right, Makshamana. Without respect for the mother, there's no true respect for the father. Exactly true. That's the case. Yes. And our greatest mother being the earth. The earth has been so unconditionally loving to us. Look, I mean, she can kick us off at any point. She has a million different ways she could do that, really. And she hasn't, and she won't. She'll continue to give us warning, continue to push us in ways that will force us to change, to live in harmony with nature again. But that's like what a good mother would do, right? You have to do your chores. Very good. Joe says, I commit to ride the high wave of energy while loving and understanding the density wave. What a wonderful commitment. Here's one of our divine masculine reps. He says he's committed to that. Beautiful. And then, of course, let's see what else is showing up. So Karina, she's really wondering, you know, how do you process trauma? She knows about emotional processing and doing 3 minds. And there's a lot of different ways to process trauma. My favorite techniques have to do with not reliving the trauma. I was so traumatized that sitting around trying to name off all the crap that's happened to me got me nowhere. It made it worse. So every new therapist I'd find, I'd have to sit and talk about my life and all this stuff, and it just made it far worse. So techniques where you don't have to relive trauma. And the techniques that I've worked on around that, you can find in a little ebook, and I'll ebook and any other resources around trauma and my steps and exactly what I do, which has worked so well for me. It's ended all my PTSD, heal in ways I never imagined. It's helped many thousands of people. I'm going to post all those resources up for you in the replay on YouTube in the description. I'll send all of that out for you so you can get that ebook for free, whatever, several ebooks actually, and just as much information as you can handle at this time, the exact clear steps on how to heal all this stuff, and share it freely. You don't have to give me credit, just share it. Help other people get access to this too. So Karina, all of that I'm going to make sure is posted on the replay of this YouTube that'll be up. And you can be able to go look at all the other techniques I use too. And let's see. Daniel says, you mentioned that some of us feel like there's only a limited amount of love in the world. I wonder how one might work through the limitation of the availability of love. Very wise question from a very wise man. And so love in of itself, right? To me, it would be very mental to get started with the mind around this first, so that your heart and your gut and your body and your spirit can catch up with it. But you got to have a mental picture of this idea of endless, limitless amounts of love, right? So normally we'd be coming at it from a 3D perspective, like, well, love is something you give and take. Okay, yeah, that can happen. But if you were to come out of that very 3D human transactional mindset, right, what are you going to find? Well, that love is not just one thing. First off, love is the complete spectrum. Love is what the whole universe is based on. Love is all the elements. Love is all the wavelengths and colors of light. Love is all the different kinds of frequency. Love is all the darkness and all the light. Love is the thing that you're discovering, and you're feeding that discovery back to source. Even when you go in places that are not full of love, you discover it still, if you're willing to merge with stuff and have it end its power over you, including the mindset that love can only be understood or had through transaction. That is not true, right? So physics-wise, it's not true. And the brain needs that. The brain wants to have an understanding of love, but we get love totally wrong. I mean, even in cultures where they had lots and lots of names for different kinds of love, they were still missing the point. They were missing the point that the whole universe is literally based off of this foundation. When you go back into source, that's all you're going to find is love, no matter where you go, no matter what direction you go. So a mindset would be, and a retraining of your consciousness around this would be to ask yourself, can I find love in this? Let me give you like a real weird example. Here, I'll take an object. Here's my pen. Ta-da! Here's a pen, right? Seems like a pen. How could I possibly find more love out of this pen? How could I find that love exists infinitely in this pen? You have to zoom in. If you go really deep into the molecules that create this pen, they are intimately bound together and they make it feel solid because of love. Go into the depths of those atoms, all those electrons and all those different subatomic particles that make the structure of those atoms. They're glued together with forces that we don't even understand. We haven't even come up with any good quality final facts about why atoms even hang out together in such intimate bonds. But we do have a mystical answer, and that's love. Love can be found everywhere. Love is a force. It's not just one kind of feeling. Force. It's a creative force, and it created this universe. And that's the one we're discovering. Play with that, Daniel. Let your mind zoom in and out of reality, looking for different ways to understand love. If some subatomic particles being nearly impossible to unbind, that in of itself is relationship between those particles. And that force, we don't understand it. We don't understand it because we've been unwilling to give it the name it really has, and that is love. It's not gravity, it's love. So it's going to be interesting for us to keep trying to discover love all the time in everything we're doing. Let's say a traumatic thing happens. How can I find love in that? When I merge with the trauma of it or the terror of it, I'm going to find some kind of light there, and it's going to be a kind of love, no matter what, no matter how dark it is that I might be merging with it. Give this a try as a mindset, as a framework, and see how it helps you, and for you too, Daniel. So Stacy says the frequency and vibration to hold when transitioning from the closet, an old job, to our true selves and our spiritual business. Do you need a frequency or vibration to hold on? No, stop holding stuff. Radiate. We got to throw this word out. I'm going to hold space. I'm going to hold. Don't. Holding creates separation. Holding creates attachment. Don't hold anything, Stacy. Instead, radiate. Radiate passion. Radiate love. Radiate connectivity. Radiate collaboration and merger. Radiate these things. Radiate what you learn every day. Radiate it so it has a chance to evolve and change. If you try to hold on to one thing, you won't be able to move, right? So we don't need to hold anything. You radiate, let it evolve through you. Radiate that light. And then simultaneously, keep working on the trauma. Keep working on your lineage and all of their trauma. Keep working on the junk in the field. Keep working on it. It will make the light radiate more purely, more profoundly, more beautifully. If you're not sure if that works, go to the very, very beginning of my YouTube channel and check out all my little weird videos I did at the beginning. See how much I've changed in this period of time we've been on YouTube together. Just look at how different the light is. It's physical proof that this is what radiance can do to someone. I look different. I sound different. I'm entirely different person than at the very beginning when I started doing videos. Take a look at that. I've been working on some of the darkest, most difficult traumas since that very beginning. And I've shifted so much of it. I've merged with it. Its power over me. You'll see what I'm talking about. Entirely different person. And that's who you are. Every day you're making a new jump. That's what you're going to do to come out to be your true self. Talk about your stories. People don't buy into salesy anymore. They just want to know what your experience is. They want to know reality, the vulnerable, the genuine, the authentic you. And you'll see how not truly authentic I was at the beginning because I was scared and I was traumatized, right? I was holding myself separate from you. And I stopped doing that, and it's changed a lot. Now these videos are entirely different. Thank God. So then Laura says, can you say more about the balance between doing work in the world to help raise energies and conditions, and on the other hand, letting go of the savior complex? Really crazy little way of functioning in the world, right? That would be mysticism. Doing the best you can to help people learn the things they need to learn, like healing trauma, like dealing with ego. So if we have vision for what we're doing to create better conditions in the world, we're just asking ourselves, who's the most vulnerable in front of me right now? Who needs access to more light right now? And if you're in the moment asking that and you're acting on it, that in itself is going to start to nurture separation between you and those that are vulnerable. And then, of course, you're going to find that it'll ping you. It'll ping different situations, and people will ping your traumas and your reactions and your triggers. And this is good. So the more public you are, the more reactions and triggers you're going to have. And those are going to show you what next layer of ego and trauma you need to work on. And that's the balance. It's the balance to say, hey, I'm not saving anybody. I'm here to advance, and so is everybody else. So big, huge mindset switch. Am I going to save myself and everybody else, or am I going to leave them all behind and we're all going to end? And nope. It's the middle ground out of that polarity, the savior complex polarity, is going to be, we're here to advance. Suffering advances us. Challenges advance me. Challenges advance you too. Challenges advance all the people around us. I'm not here to end suffering. I'm not here to stop advancement. I'm here to continue to work on being one with everybody and everything around me. That's all. That way I can be more and more like Source that maintains oneness with all things. And that's what we're shooting for. That's all. So we got to simplify it for our brain. It really does want to save people, wants to end suffering. It wants to try to be a lawnmower mom, is what they call it, or lawnmower parenting, right? It's where you make sure every obstacle is out of the way so that that person can go on their life happily. But that's not the job. The job is to help people advance through the challenges and suffering and to learn exactly those massive lessons, those huge conscious advancements through all of that dense, dark, and pain, not to end it. So that's the end of the savior complex and the function of working with people to move through them, those doorways, those blocks, those traumas, to get to the other side, to get to higher consciousness. You got to use those traumas as stepping stones. If you take them away, no one's going to get very far. And even worse, they'll be dependent on us. And even worse, they won't be empowered to do this on their own or to teach others. And when they start to teach others, that's when they've embodied what we've helped them do. It's a trick. And that's the mindset shift I've had to go through, because for years and years, I had a massive savior complex. I wanted suffering to end on this planet. And now I don't. It's not that I want suffering at all. It's just that I understand what suffering is now. Yeah. Learn and advance. It sure has for me. Without all my suffering and my pain and my agony, I would not be here at all. I would. So Laura, another Laura says, I understand your feeling of loneliness. I feel that, but also a loathing to combat it. I guess just one just keeps pushing through. Yeah, absolutely. I think, when I'm feeling lonely, it's because I feel separate. And that's always a clue to me. Oh, that's a big challenge for me. So, for example, I've lived out in this country homestead in the boonies for several years now, and I've had to learn how to enjoy being alone. I didn't have any of that. I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I wasn't actually physically actually alone until I was like 13 or 14 years old. So being alone was terrifying for me all these years, and now I can be alone. I've learned how to be alone, and it was something massive I needed to learn how to do. I still have loneliness, and I still have a lot of arrogance, and that's okay. So chipping away at it, well, I set myself up for success by being around actual physical people this year. And I've already got started with that by being in Seattle a couple of weeks ago. So we have a good start to being able to say, hey, I've overcome that challenge, but now I'm going to let this unfold the way it needs to. And it's turned into me being able to work with people in person more. So what a wonderful thing. If I hadn't really worked on that, I might not be able to have the guts to do this in-person work this year I'm going to. So Boel is mentioning something on bacteria and viruses. I tuned into my sinuses this morning and I found a surprisingly jolly party up there. I always thought of bacteria as kind of serious. Oh, they're kind of silly. They seem not to mind much being in a physical form or not. That's very clever. I really like that. It's important because one thing that came to mind, Boel, when this new virus showed up is, I wonder if anybody's thought about talking to it. what would it tell you? What would it say? What would it want us to learn about? And, especially a designer virus, wow, what would it say? All bacteria and viruses are deeply intelligent. And in fact, most of your body is run by symbiotic bacteria. And it's super smart. And you're right, it does have a little party, doesn't it? Bacteria is much more jolly and joyful than they seem. And so are parasites. It's interesting that we really want to get rid of these things, but we don't actually spend time learning from them. And that would be a good step for us, wouldn't it? To start to treat bacteria and viruses and all these things, parasites, as intelligent beings, because they are, trying to understand them in a deep, more mystical way. It could help us to heal better. We could get answers we never thought we would have. And that's critical, I think, to all healing. So that's kind of cool. Thanks for that little story, Boel. Can't really think of any bacteria stories off the top of the head, but I'm sure many people have them. Makshamana's talking about, remember a story about the divine feminine falling into prostitution and being lifted by the divine masculine, by our Father, up into her healed state, free of trauma and restored to purity and glory. Yes, that story. We know that story, don't we? And it's a story that's been played out by many masters. That's true, isn't it? And that's what we're looking at. Beautiful, thank you. Caroline says, I'm glad you're seeing a spectrum of masculine and feminine. Oh yes, definitely. It's true. And it's definitely an intimate spectrum for the soul, because the soul has been along that spectrum all over the place. I've been a man in many lifetimes with very different kinds of perspectives, and there's a woman in many lifetimes with also similar. And so some of us will have like a lot more masculine lifetimes, some will have a lot more feminine. Goes back and forth. Everybody's different. We have to have those uniquenesses in our soul perspective so that source can learn. If the same, the homogeny of the answer about what is love would be too simple. It would be too narrow. We can't have a nice, big, broad connection of spectrum and all the different varieties of consciousness. That's why the universe is so big. It's because we need to answer the truth of what is love from every vantage point possible. And that's the immensity of the universe. Good. And so here's a good question from Makshamana. What can the divine masculine offer the traumatized feminine to heal the delicateness of trust within the feminine heart and be on a collective path to unified energies collaborating for the well-being of all life everywhere? And what can the divine feminine offer the divine feminine and the divine masculine to release and heal the deepest traumas of all incarnations? That's the set of questions we're answering this year. And we've been answering for a long time. There are answers to this. And it's worth having a talk about it, I think. I had been trying to do these little short kind of lecture talks about different subjects, ones that I just wanted to converse and talk about, maybe not teach so much about. I do a class every month that's in deep to very specific mystical topics, but I hadn't done a talk in a couple of months. So maybe we should do a little talk about masculine and feminine and talk about what we have discovered and what gaps in our knowledge we need to answer, because we're not done. We're not done. Lots of work to do. Yeah, very good. Okay. And so Angela was wanting to know if the topic of artificial intelligence has come up. Nope, not yet. So you brought it up. I'll mention just energetically AI. I can speak from my experience. So about 20 years ago, I was on an airplane, and the guy sitting next to me was actually one of the head artificial intelligence in the United States. And he said, we're so far from being able to have true quality AI, mainly because, and this is telling about what, for example, the masculine needs right now, mainly because different scientists who he said were mainly guys, right? They can't come together and collaborate. He said they keep going on little tangents and they don't actually try to come together and make everything function together. So what does that look like? Well, years later, the closest they came to getting together and actually making it all function together is quantum computing. Quantum computing will be the foundation for true artificial intelligence. Up to now, we don't actually have true, actual artificial intelligence. We have a lot of different versions of it that got close, but that's not what true artificial intelligence is. Now we have quantum computers. For the very first time, we have the possibility of having AI. What does that mean for us? Honestly, it simply means that we have tried to humanize our technology and projecting human consciousness onto technology that will never have it, which is why we try to make robots that look like us. That in of itself is a human habit. We'll never truly be able to match perfectly what human consciousness looks like. We don't have that technology, and we never did. And that's so important. That was much more ancient tech. It's the tech that built our, and it's not accessible to us yet. We have a lot more work to do in consciousness before we're going to get allowed access to that. And we've tried, we've weaseled our way into some genetic modification and those kinds of things. But the fact is that we have no idea how it works. We really don't. Only in the past few years, we've discovered some brand new organs. I mean, we missed a whole bunch of actual organs. That's how little we know. And so we're just babies, honestly, still on this, Angela. It's when we're going to start seeing people to combine technology with the physical body that we're going to start to see serious problems. Please don't get any RFID chips in your body. Please don't let your brain get molded with a computer. That's the wrong direction for consciousness. That's my opinion on AI for you in a short little tidbit there. Okay. And so Milena is asking, what's going on collectively with our heads, our eyes, and our throats? There seems to be a wave of ascension symptoms connected with these particular parts of the body. Seems like we're experiencing major updates in these areas. Oh yeah, and if you're not resisting it, for sure, you're gonna start to feel your body change a lot. And if you're doing the inner work that's required around trauma and ego, you're gonna better and it won't be so bad because you won't be resisting it. I don't really know, my dear. I think that usually with this up mind here, which includes the throat and the whole face and the head, the third eye and the crown, when changes go on there, that is in connections of consciousness. So when humans have a lot of changes here, this is us getting more connected to the rest of the universe and saying, well, we're not just alone on a rock in space. We're with a bunch of other types of beings in the middle of this galaxy in space. And so that's massive change going on. We're not alone, and people are starting to realize that. And collectively, that's totally creating consciousness because it's true, we're not. So that's galactic consciousness coming online. I'm so glad because over the past few years, working really diligently to try to bring galactic consciousness to the people. We can be doing that and just helping people connect to the fact that we're being lied to. We're not alone on this planet. We never have been. So that's kind of what I see, Milena. Maybe that'll resonate with you. And so let's see, a few more messages on here, and then I'm going to go move to my Q&A board, and then I'm going to check on you on YouTube, okay? Joe is saying, as we advance, we stay way ahead of definition of artificial intelligence is. That's true. And yeah, Angela, you brought it up because it scares you, right? It's scary, I think. And we've been trained to think that way. Look at all the movies about AI over the past few years. We've got tons. And most of it's not pretty. It's pretty nasty, ugly stuff. And we've been trained to be afraid of AI through the movie industry, haven't we? We've been trained to be separated from how much power we actually have to create or not create this kind of stuff, right? So just find that fear in your body. Find that fear. It's a negative program. We were taught to have that mindset to be afraid, right? And that's okay. So it's the next challenge in front of us to merge with. We find the fear. Where is it in your body? Welcome it there again and again. As it moves around your body, find it there and do it again. This is instant processing. This is merger. This is mysticism. We say AI makes me afraid. Genetic modification makes me afraid. Being forced to put an RFID chip in my body makes me afraid. That's the next road for you to go down so that it loses its power over you. Then you're not afraid of AI or ideas or tech. You're going to be an influencer of it. You're going to say no or yes or whatever it is that's going to keep you becoming one with whatever you're afraid of. So, and I think that's really key. Good, very good. And so we have all these different, well, one last question here about medicines. Trying to a lot of people finding they can't tolerate prescription medicines anymore. I think we've often been taught to tolerate it, Lynn, and we've been taught to tolerate it. I don't think we ever could tolerate it. And so moving towards natural medicine is really a move away from these kinds of minds around, well, we know enough about the body. When did we know enough? When did we know enough about how the body really works? We're discovering real crazy stuff, like some of the basic medicines we have in our cabinets are cancer causing. I mean, that's the kind of level of ignorance we had about the human body. So it's where we're going. We got to get back to nature with all those compounds working in tandem with each other and with the bacteria of our physical bodies and with ancient relationships that the human body has had with those substances. All right, so on the Q&A board, Kate says, very recent reports about contaminated tap and bottled drinking water with many not previously reported all over the USA. How do we clean up our drinking water? Those chemicals have been there for ages and ages, and a lot of those chemicals the body dumps out, so don't be too freaked out about it. Yes, sometimes it'll build up depending on the chemical. Sometimes it goes straight through. It just depends on the chemical, right? And honestly, American tap water, I mean, come on, it's just terrible. And the fact that Native American reservations, they don't even have running water on some of those reservations. Again, very shameful proof that the implementation of really excellent technology in households for entire cities has not been implemented. It's been suppressed instead. Why? because living 1,000 years is not acceptable for those in charge who run all the resources. That's why. So here's the deal. Get some shungites. Talk to your water. Water has memory. Buy really good filters for your tap water. Buy filters for your shower head. Do the best you can. It's expensive to do that. Baby steps. Save up money to do that. Maybe go in collectively with your roommates. That kind of stuff. Whatever you need to do. The very first thing you can be doing is talking to your water and praying with it. Pray over your water. Talk to the chemicals. They're just chemicals. They don't hate you. They're just chemicals, right? So we can talk to these things. Water has memory. It can change atomic structure if you talk to it. Give it a chance to do better for you. And just do what you can. We bought a filter on our water, our tap water thing, and I'm buying a shower head filter, get rid of the chlorine and the weird stuff in the water where I'm at. It's apparent it's there. That also is one personal step. Then we got to vote the right people in to local community government to make sure the implementation of laws and technology that will keep us safe happen. Local government is very important. Your county, your local community, your local village. This is where massive, massive change can happen. It's your stronghold. That's your bunker. Trust that you have influence there. Local influence is important. Start and then move outwards from there. Just do what you can and get as much water from natural sources as you can too. I used to nearly the top of Mount Rainier to bring home giant bottles of water coming off the mountain. Wonderful. We can do that too. So be safe, obviously you're not going to be gathering sources of water that are stagnant or nearby animals and things because you might get jarred. So, I was looking for springs coming straight off the snow melt. That's where I was getting some water too. But this is a question. I mean, it counts. And then merging with any fear, right? Any fear you have around chemicals, merge with that fear. Find it in your body, welcome it so it loses its power over you. Very good. And so looking through my questions here on my Q&A board. Anne is asking, what do you know about gene editing to cure diseases? Is it something we should support? No, I've never been okay with gene editing. Never. I don't think that the genetic modification of human beings by other humans is a wise endeavor. Far, far too dangerous to begin caste systems based on that. You can imagine how nasty it could get and how awful it would be. And how, oh, well, you don't have enough money to access this? Too bad, you're going to die. That's exactly what's going to happen if that gets implemented. Because the power over piece is very apparent. So I'm totally against all genetic modification of plants, animals, and humans. DNA is a perfect technology. Stop messing with it. Heal trauma, and you will watch genetics change. Epigenetics is a real branch of science. And that's my claws coming out. All right. All right, so Anne's asking all the new space technology being developed. I'm going to change that a little bit. That has already been developed back in the 1950s. Will it bring us closer to universal consciousness or be used for military purposes? In the 1950s, it was created to protect our butts because AI, not AI, intelligent beings, ETs, 3D ETs coming in, making deals with Hoover, right? All of this you can read in a very important book written by William S. Tompkins, the man who helped engineer and design and literally was the architect for the current Space Force and all the technology they have had. And he wrote the book Selected by Extraterrestrials. If you want to know all about that and what's being done with it now, read that book. That's what you'll need to know. So Anne, grab that book and you'll be able to understand exactly what's going on with that technology. What did my virus say when I to a virus I had? That's a good question. It said a lot. So Rochelle, I won't be able to talk exactly what I learned, but everybody's tends to say different things because, of course, the unique situation each person is in. So when you talk to a bacteria or virus or infection, it's going to give you a different answer than it would somebody else. So what it said to me was really going to be relevant to me. And that's kind of how it goes. Good. So let's see. Kirk has this very interesting, very beautiful concept around love, and I really love it. Very cool. So Kirk says, to me, love is a creational paradigm. It's the alpha and omega. Yeah, like the whole spectrum, right? So beginning and end. So when everything came from love and nothing can exist outside of love, or oneness for that matter, I don't believe the source or creator wants to experience love just because it's experiencing this all the time. It is immersed in it. No, that's the case. I'd say it wants to understand it. Experiencing and understanding are two different things. I believe that creator loves to experience and explore, to go beyond where it's ever been before, right? Yeah, that's why there's so many different universes. There's no judgment about creation, wrongness. Every experience is equally valued. Creator gets really happy when created beings become creators and start new cycles and cycles with. Ah, it's beautiful. Thank you, Kirk. I love it. Thank you so much. Yes, very good. So, of other statements, a couple people mentioned some things about water real quick here, which is handy. So one person said natural action structured water filter. You can take it anywhere and it changes the structure so that the chemicals and toxins aren't going to be so problematic. And then Vibes Up, I love that company. Vibes Up's also a good place for shungite and lots of other products to help with structured water. And Angela's asking for the name of the book. So that book was William S. Tompkins' Selected by Extraterrestrials. It's the book you all will want to read. A very important book. It'll tell you everything you need to know about the Space Force. Very good. And so, Rochelle, I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to answer the question around what is will, but in short, so not in depth, but in short, when we are working on ourselves, when we're working on our ego, when we're working on our trauma, we end up discovering that our will is not our own. That personal will doesn't exist. It's divine will. It's from source. And in oneness, you begin to feel more and more one with the will of source. And it's a very weird feeling because then you realize that every single choice you ever made was literally made by Creator through you. How wonderful, how beautiful. That is what will is. And free will, well, that's an illusion. It's a good, handy one and a very important one. So we don't want to toss free will out. Free will, well, that's us reading the book page by page when the book's already really been written. That's okay. But in that experience, through us, the Creator gets to experience that. Through us, we also get to experience being one with Source. And that's the goal. Very good. So I'm going to go check my YouTube right now so I can see if there's any comments or questions on YouTube. And so hello, all of you on YouTube. Glad you came. So Moria is asking, when I think I have to send my own energy and light, this creates a feeling of depletion, unwillingness. But if I work with and allow divine energy to come from source, it enlivens me as a conduit. The essence of source is infinitely stronger than anything I may have to it. The divine will of source is stronger than my will. The greatness of source humbles me. Wow. That is such a precious, precious learning and viewpoint. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel that this is so important for us to hear, Moria. Thank you. So Plug, hopefully I was able to answer what I thought the coronavirus was. And so Sylvia is asking a very good question. How do we help the masculine or even the feminine don't know that they're traumatized, or that or if they're in denial because of the unknown emotions? Look, denial, seriously, right? Denial. The denial that we have around whether or not we are actually traumatized or not, like what's really going on. People would really rather bypass that. It's much easier to bypass this kind of stuff. I get it, right? It's true. And we will watch our friends and family and even our partners and people all around us be in denial. And it's going to be a consistent thing we'll come up against. Now, here's the deal. If you want that to lose power over you, well, I really want to save you. I want to help you, but you're denying it. You're denying that you're having problems. That's not up to us, is it? Then we bow to all of that and say, I'm not here to save anybody. I'm going to work on me. And if that light gets to that person, then I believe that's part of the divine will. And so that's what I step back and say, I believe this person is in denial. How am I in denial? This person has trauma and negative programming and emotions. How do I have trauma and negative programming and emotions? Right? The way. Little Mandalorian check there. Okay. So Krista's asking, I have healed so much. I know you have, Krista. I am no longer addicted to things. The trauma is so less intense now. I've been healing and clearing for so long, and it still isn't showing up. My outer life still is lost. How do I share my experience? How do I become and be the light worker I know I am, and yet be sufficient and not a burden? Good. Krista, this is the massive polarity that you have been presented with as a soul in this lifetime to examine, right? And that's the work you're doing. You're working on feeling one with your life, feeling one with your purpose, being able to be who you really are, and let that be sufficient. And so anything that makes you feel otherwise is the exact thing to keep merging with. And the reason on so long is because there's so many different variations on that. And so every time you feel like you spiral backwards into some same situation or problem, it's not backwards. It's a spiral that always goes up, but you will cycle through years of the same polarity or the same issue or the same challenge. This is a good sign that you're on the right track. It's actually not that you're going backwards. So you're doing it. You're doing it. You are it. Now it's just the discovery of whatever's keeping you from being one with it. And that's just going to be more trauma and junk and ego. That's all. And it doesn't stop. So release yourself from an ending, some perfect ending that doesn't exist. Release yourself from that. Let the chains go. You don't have to function in the future where all that pain is, where all the reaction is. You are free. You are free to be in the now, to find every tidbit of light and information you can in each moment. That's what you're doing. And you're doing it really well. Keep it up. Good. So we have Moria asking, how do we release resistance to what's happening and deeply feeling the pain and surrender to trust that the divine will unfold perfectly what is needed to help humanity survive? No, that's not it. There's a million timelines, Moria, where we will fail, where we won't survive. There's a million timelines where we will survive and we'll become emissaries to other planets and galaxies about love and compassion. The truth is that every single one of those is perfect. Can we hold space or radiate, let's not hold, radiate trust and love for the divine will and all that it is, including all the timelines where we all fail? That enlightened state of consciousness where we can maintain a perspective that says all the timelines of reality, they are all equal and they are all perfect. Then we release ourselves from trying to desperately cling on to outcomes. And we get to empower ourselves in the moment. Keep walking one step at a time with all of our will and all of our consciousness the best we can, with all of our drama and our fear and our trauma. One baby step at a time on the very thin line, each moment that marks where we're at, which timeline we're picking. But we still must maintain an understanding that all outcomes are perfect. This is very hard to do, especially when we really keep wanting to cling on to a future. This is so hard to do that it's been programmed into human consciousness to constantly worry about the future. And that's how important this is, to be able to see all timelines as perfect. There is no wrong timeline. There never was. And it was all written. Good. All right, so let's go. We're checking out our Zoom again. And a few more questions up, and then we're going to do these 2 pillars of light. We're going over time a little today. That's okay. So, Melena, that's a good question. Can we pinpoint the origin of black magic on this planet? Was it brought from other worlds to Earth? Actually, over the past few years, I've been looking at that exact subject. And yes, we can. I'm not going to be able to do it today for you in a historical way. But yes, we can. And yes, it did. It came from elsewhere, off planet. Humans were taught to do SRA. Humans were taught to do human sacrifice. Humans were taught black magic. Yes, you're right on the money. Very good. All right, so we have some work to do. We have 2 pillars of light to build, so we're just going to take our time on it. It's okay if we go over our usual. The first pillar of light we're going to build is in the Rift Valley, not only to support the continued of the farmers there and the people there to survive and get past one of the most dramatic losses of food they've ever had in 70, 75 years. And so a lot of brand new souls experiencing this for the first time there who have not had that experience because it's been generations since that happened. And this, of course, being a massive message from the earth to us about food, about what it's for us to move forward. I think it's very interesting. So let us ask Source now together, what is it that you want from us? How can we support the people of Africa that massive, amazing, important continent. And of course, the people of the world. What is the messages from the gut, the heart, and the mind that need to be continually transmitted from the spiritual object we're going to create together? So energetically in my gut, I feel strength, but I also feel nurturing, and I feel the energies of the oneness with the Divine Mother in the root. So that's what we're going to project there. Strength, nurturing, and oneness with the Divine Mother, including the earth, her representative. And then from the heart space, I feel a very strong masculine energy, oneness with the Divine Father. The power of manifestation, the power of materially being able to make changes that will help our societies, the gusto and the drive to make physical changes in our personal reality that will affect the rest of the world and the universe. So that's the energy we'll project from there. And then from the brain mind, from the third eye and the crown, continued efforts of galactic consciousness. So very good. We have these three energies we're going to tap into to build this pillar. So all you have to do is imagine the Rift Valley. You can kind of pull up a map of Africa in your mind. The Rift Valley is going to be in the lower right-hand side of Africa towards the Horn. And so that's where we will build our pillar of light. So if you would come together with me in a big circle, just imagine yourself with everyone else holding hands together, all of us in a big circle. We're standing just above the Rift Valley together, viewing this part of the earth, noticing all the locusts, and we bow to them. You are welcome here, locusts. We don't hate you, and you don't hate us. There is no hatred, there is no anger between us. We do accept you as intelligent beings, doing exactly what you were made to do. And so let's drop into the gut and project out into the center as the foundation of our pillar of light. With big, huge breath, we're going to project nurturing strength and oneness with Divine Mother and nature. So if you can pull that up in your mind and your root, in your gut, and now with a deep breath, project that light to the center as the foundation of our pillar. Beautiful. So I see a lot when we do these things together, and this time I saw all this creative energy come together, and it turned into one side of this foundation growing and creating, right? All these flowers and plants and animals, very Garden of Eden-like. And the other side was all of those same exact things at the end of their life, becoming one again with the rest of nature. So I saw life and I saw death, creation and destruction, one working as one function, all based in love, because nothing in this universe is ever wasted. All based in love, but I saw that the combination of nurturing and strength and oneness with nature includes destruction. It doesn't just only include creation. That's the foundation of our pillar here. We're welcoming that law of nature to be one with all the rest of the laws instead of being afraid of it and separating ourselves from destruction, being afraid of death. Instead, we're going to celebrate it as one of the most intimate ways we understand that this universe is based in that love, because nothing is ever wasted. Good. Now let's come into the heart space. We're projecting oneness with the Divine Father, the masculine ability of manifestation through the embodiment. Very powerful. Of course, the feminine too. That manifestation of the material through the embodiment is equally as powerful. And these two, they work together to create. So we want the divine feminine and divine masculine on board. So we have the divine feminine as our foundation. Now we're asking divine masculineness, the manifestation of change, the personal initiative for the baby steps to make ourselves great again, great as a species, greater than we ever have before, to help build the steps that we need to get to higher consciousness, to get to the golden age, to get to ultimate survival of humanity. That's what we're asking for. Pull that up in your heart and let's project it now with a deep breath into the center as the middle of our pillar of light. Amazing. So what I saw was, I saw that energy come into the center and then it sort of burst out very structurally, looked very beautiful, like sacred geometric structure. And this structure combining itself with those laws of nature as our foundation, but to support it so that it could actually grow into other physical dimensions and non-physical dimensions. So the structure of the divine masculine became for the divine feminine nature and creation and destruction, those laws. It integrated and preserved the other two laws. These are the four laws of the universe: creation, destruction, preservation, and integration. Creation, destruction are the feminine laws. Preservation and integration are the masculine. And that's exactly what I've just seen, that both work together to create reality in all dimensions. Beautiful. Exactly what we're intending. And now from the very top, we're going to put the cherry on top of this pillar, and then we're going to move over to China and help them out with a pillar of light too, for healing, for understanding, and of course for the strength of the people to be able to move through this most difficult time. So with the very top of our pillar here, we have galactic consciousness, that the honoring and the combining of all the laws of the universe within ourselves, that it can give us the outcome we want. Higher consciousness for all humankind, and long life, health, love, appreciation, kindness, compassion, and the ability to move forward as a species, to be emissaries of that love. That's our hope. That's the thing we're working for. So let's do the top of our pillar of light now with a deep breath. Wow. So normally when I see a human being, I don't just see a human body. I'm very blessed. I get to see a lot more than that. But I'll see sort of a pillar of light, the soul, move through the crown of the human in through the body, animating it. And that's what I see now. This pillar of light looks like a perfect version of humanity. It's neither man nor woman in this case, but it's the blueprint. It's the blueprint for better humanity. It's the soul level, higher consciousness, the universal level of consciousness that comes down in through the laws of the universe to create what we experience in the 3D as change, as destruction, as creation, as manifestation, as abundance, as oneness. And so this pillar of light looks like a blueprint for that. It's a beautiful human blueprint that really includes all men and all women in all ages. It includes everyone from the past and the present and the future. And this one is so interesting. It looks more human-like than any pillar of light I've ever made. It looks like what we're missing. It's the pieces of the spectrum that we're missing right now in our consciousness. So let that be. Let's let it just resonate as it will in one of the great hearts of human creation, the Rift Valley, but also in sovereignty, in support with all of the peoples of Africa and what they're going through right now, both from natural disasters to human-made extremism. And so we ask for this pillar of light to remain in perpetuity, supporting all of the whole planet, but especially Africa right now, as she continues to grow and change and hopefully be a seat of incredible, incredible wisdom that we can be able to be part of again. And now let's unattach ourselves from this pillar. So we unattach ourselves from the crown, the mind and the third eye, the heart space, the gut, and the whole body with a deep breath. Now, if you listen to this later on, you can add to this pillar anytime. And you can be able to add intentions at any point, no matter what. And any of the pillars we've ever made are the same. They remain in the fourth dimension as a spiritual object that we created together. And your signature is there, but you don't have to be energetically tied to it. We can release it and let it be its own thing. And that's a good task to do towards the end of the creation of anything like this. And you can create pillars of light with your guides and friends and family as you wish too. Now you see how straightforward it is. It's not hard to do. And I hope that you will for yourself and your household and whatever else you need to do pillars for that can radiate and resonate your intent and all the light that you're encouraging. All right, now let's move our attention over to China now. So we're going to Wuhan, and that's up farther north in China. So we just need to imagine China right now. And let's just envision Wuhan. I see a bit of chaos energy going on. So that's, of course, totally valid, completely normal that would be happening with what's going on with everyone right now. It seems really dark. It's heavy. It's sad. It's depressed. It's anxious. There's a lot of terror, not just regular old fear, but straight up terror because people are dying. So here we are. And we also have, of course, the other player, the virus, this new coronavirus. So we bow to the virus. You exist. You exist. So we have universal compassion for you because you exist, because you have a place in this universe. You are loved nonetheless, no matter what happens because of your presence. There are no conditions to love. There are no conditions to compassion. And so from the root, let us project just that. There are no conditions to our love. There are no conditions to compassion, and there's no conditions to healing. There's no conditions to healing. And that's what we're saying. That's the statement from the root. So let's wing it, and we're going to just do this pillar now. So imagine coming together again in a circle up above, way above Wuhan. We're going to make this thing real big here. So we want the base to be massive. The base of our pillar of light is going to contain all of Wuhan. And that's what we intend through our root now. There are no conditions to love. There are no conditions to compassion. There are no conditions to healing. Feel that deep in your root, and let's project it with a breath now to the center. Wow. What I saw was a beautiful cloud coming up from the land. This cloud coming up and creating an umbrella of pure white light around Wuhan, and then it's showering this very high level of consciousness. It looks like gold light, little flecks of gold light down onto the people on the land. Good. Let that light reach who it will, who it needs to reach the most. We trust that. We surrender all that light. And now from the heart space, we want courage for the people. We want courage. We want them to feel strong. What would we feel in their shoes? That is intimate compassion. What would we feel in their shoes? What do they need? They need to feel like everything's going to be okay, even if they do get sick, even if they do die, that they don't have to fear how all of this unfolds. Great courage and bravery to be human right now. All of us are brave, even if we don't feel it every day. But it does take great courage to be human right now. We can trust that. We've got guts. We've got passion. We've got drive. We can do this. We can become the human race we've all hoped to be. It's totally possible. It's one of the billions of possibilities out there. The fact that that even is true, that is possible, that's hope. Courage and hope from the heart space now. Let us project courage and hope for the people of China and all of those affected by this virus right now, and all of those affected by any illness. Let's project that now into the center with a breath. Good. So this one at the center, it moved from the heart space, but instead of just showering light over one place, it created a massive field of lively, bright energy around the whole planet. It created another layer of light percolating down to us, coming from courage and hope. And that layer looks more like this lovely sort of sapphire blue color. So that's what I see now. Now let's come into the brain mind, the mind and the heart. We're moving up from the heart into the brain mind from the crown. We're asking for divine will. Divine will to be established as what it is, the source of all will, the source of all creation. We just want to connect this pillar of light to that. We don't need anything from divine will because we are divine will, but we do want to feel connected to Creator and, of course, the will of Creator. So we're opening the door for that. By consciously building this last part of our pillar, it's going to be a wide open door to divine will, divine outcomes, and the end of the savior complex in order to nurture oneness with source and creator. So take that in your mind now and let's project it to the top of our pillar with a big deep breath. Wow. This one looks very different than any other pillar we've done before. So this one, this part of the pillar ended up opening up this incredible gateway to the edge of the universe. And I see the void, which is good. That's the edge of the universe. And it's opened up to source and creator and that very beautiful, precise, and yet so broad and complete consciousness of the divine will of creator, which is so far beyond human consciousness. We tend to look through our lens of the human condition and imagine creator being human-like. And that's not the case. Of course, we ourselves have a portion of that wisdom and that will and that knowledge in our consciousness, but we're a facet of that. And what I see is us recognizing that. I see the ability for human beings to recognize the facets of divine will through all versions of consciousness, even a coronavirus or a locust. Wow, that's profound. And so this pillar reaches to the edge of the universe. This one's much bigger than just working for humankind. It's a lighthouse for all consciousness, and indeed human beings. If we do this correctly and we stay in the moment and we keep doing the work, we're going to get to the point where we're able to perceive this for ourselves in its entirety as a species. That's what we're shooting for. That's the timeline we can create each moment, right? While still loving with equanimity and equality all timelines and bringing all that home into oneness. Good. So let's hang out with these two pillars for just a moment. Their nature, the difference between them, how they might help us to unattach ourselves from trying to save everybody and everything, even trying to save ourselves, and how instead, by understanding suffering and challenges and pain to be some of our greatest learning tools, we can enter into these higher states, the new blueprint for humankind, including harmony with nature and the divine feminine, including harmony with the divine masculine, and of course, harmony with each other and all nature, past, present, and future, and all the soul level consciousness coming through each of us. That's the blueprint we found here in Rift Valley. And then, of course, in China, the beautiful pillar of light we've created, which we're going to unattach ourselves from in a moment, giving us a chance to understand that there are no conditions to love, compassion, and healing, and that we are very brave and courageous to be in consciousness now, and that oneness with Source and all of the creation of this universe is the end of personal will and the recognition of divine will, and that can launch us forward in consciousness in ways we'd never dreamed of yet. So let us now unattach ourselves from our crown and our head, down through the heart space and the gut and the rest of the body from our second pillar of light in China. With a deep breath, we allow these two spiritual creations of ours to continue through time, through space, until they are no longer needed. And add on any of your intent along the way. If you have new ideas of intentions and support, you can keep adding them. They're like these beautiful sort of natural temples we've created that are on the spiritual realm. Nobody can go and write graffiti on them or destroy them. They are spiritual, so they exist in the fourth dimension, but they are not going anywhere, and they have direct effects on this planet. And the more we do of this kind of work, even from your armchair, even from your bed, you can be doing this. You can be adding more and more of powerful pillars of light out there in the world. Now you know how to do it. Do it with your friends, your family, your guides. Do it as often as you like. Do it for things that are personal and things that are global. Do it for whatever causes, people, places, things, or vulnerable beings you want to. Keep doing this part, the spiritual creative part. It's very key, because that's how we bring in some of that infinite love available to us by giving selflessly every day the best we can. Good. So I'm so excited for what we've created today and what we've covered. Thank you. Thank you for coming and joining me. And I will see you in February already. Goodness. I'm pulling up my calendar here. I'm going to see you next on February 23rd will be our next community call. And so just look for an email with that registration link closer towards that date. I try to send it out a few days beforehand, catch everybody, make sure they can come and join us and share. I'd love for anyone you'd like to come and join us, because this is meant for us to continue to build our community all over the world and just feel connected and not alone, right? Less lonely. These are my favorite times because I definitely don't feel lonely right now. Thank you. I just love all of you so much and all you've been through. You matter. You matter. All of the little things you do every day, they're so profound. It's so fantastic, so amazing, fills me with wonder every waking moment. I'll never stop being amazed by you. Thank you. I love all of you. So, Sophia wants to know real quick, what were those two websites that I mentioned earlier? The one for the business retreat, that's May 1, 2, and 3, May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That will be businessvisionintensive.com. Check that out. Meet my friend Susan. We're going to do some really cool work together. And then in June for Ecuador, that's Seer and Scientist, my website, Seer, SEER, and scientist.com/retreats. Or if you go to the main page, there's a retreats button at the menu at the very top. Or if you go down to offerings, you'll see a big, huge banner that says, Join Elizabeth in Ecuador, June 2020. And you can click that link too and see what I've got in store for you. So I can't wait. I can't wait to see you in person. I hope that you'll come if you can. And don't worry, I'm going to teach stuff online and we'll still be connecting via our call every month and doing more talks and things like that. And if you want to hang out with me on a platform that's not Facebook, I'm on Slack and we do a little $13 a month membership. And it's really fun, amazing people on there. We share a lot of stuff and techniques and ideas, and people get support there every day if they need it from me and a lot of other really awake, amazing people. And so I love being on there. I get a lot of support myself by being on there, and it really helps with this whole loneliness issue. In the meantime, though, if you can't manage that, don't worry. Just email me. Ask for scholarship. I'm happy to have you. Come, let's talk. Let's be together. You can talk about your business. We have a business channel. We have art. We have laughter, silly memes, and things like that, and all kinds of interesting things going on there. Lots of little circles that get together to process and talk and check in. Wonderful community, very active. Come and join me if you'd like. If you want more information, you can learn about that on my website under the Circle community, or email me if you want a scholarship. My email is elizabeth@seer, SEER, seerandscientist.com. So elizabeth@seerandscientist.com. Email me. I'm here for you. I might not be able to answer your email right away, but I do read everything that comes through, even if I'm not able to respond right away or at all sometimes. I hear you. I'm here for you. I care about you. Your journey is incredibly important. It was written that you and I and all these people that we got to hang out with together, that we would do this work, that we would carve the way for humanity to reach the golden age. That's the job. And you're doing it. You're doing it by being you. That's all. That's all that's needed. Be you. You're perfect. I love you. Namaste. We'll talk soon. And have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye-bye, my friends.